You're listening to Raising Me. I'm Adrienne Stein, and we are translating slang with the one and only Mr. Philip Lindsay, who went from youth pastor to middle school special education teacher to helping parents understand what's happening in middle schools in his viral videos. He is so much fun. Check it out. Mr. Lindsay, I am so glad you're here. First of all, I'm going to call you Mr. Lindsay because I really have a thing with calling teachers by their first name. I don't know, maybe
Yeah,
it's just growing up, it's always a Mr. or a Miss or a Mrs. So anyway, Mr.
sounds good to me.
Lindsay, so glad you're here. Want to just let our listeners know you're a middle school special education math teacher that has just found enormous success on social media. So let's just start a little bit with your background. How long
Yeah,
have you been teaching and how the heck did you get here?
yes, absolutely. So this is actually, I've just started my third year of teaching. So teaching was not my first profession. I was actually for about 8 years, I was a youth pastor. And so I worked with middle school and high school students in the church context, uh, connecting with them, helping them. And then recently, in the last couple of years, transitioned into teaching. So uh, I've always loved working with kids, and I needed to kind of find a transition out of church life, if you will. I have a young kid, and being out in the evenings and at night and all that kind of stuff, the schedule was a little bit too much. And so tried to find something that I could still work with kids, but also be there with my kid and be a good dad. So
Yeah, you have a 4-year-old, which is such a sweet age. One of my favorite ages, actually.
it's awesome. It's
Yeah.
a good deal.
What I, you know, when choosing another profession and going into teaching, middle school seems like the toughest of years to jump right into. So what is it about middle school students that really that fuels you, that
Yeah.
resonates with you? It could be such an impactful time, but also,
Yes.
boy, a tricky time
It's
too.
it's tough. Yeah, I think the thing that draws me to them so much, and I've always, even when I was a youth pastor, I was always drawn more to the middle school side than the high school side. I think the biggest thing that draws me to them is how impactful that stage of life can be, and how the things that happen in that stage of life can really set you up for a good trajectory or a not so good trajectory, right? And so I think it's that idea that, okay, you know what, if I can be a meaningful, safe, helpful person at this stage in their life, then maybe that could save them from some, decisions or just pathways that maybe could lead them in ways that they don't want to end up in. And so I think that's the biggest draw. And they're just so goofy, so
They
random,
are
so like
awkward
awkward, but
and trying to find
hilarious.
themselves. Yeah.
Yes. Yes, and so if I can be, someone who kinda, I don't know, draws out the deeply rooted valuable things about them in middle school to kinda help them find themselves, even if they don't know what they're gonna do when they grow up or what they're good at the very least, if I can be like, "No, like, you got value, and, people care about you, and you're kind, and you're good," or whatever it is in that stage of life. If I can be that person, that's why I'm here in middle school. That's where I wanna be. Yeah.
And you're doing it in such a relatable way, in a
Yeah.
fun way, and on the platform, it's like meeting them where they are, right?
Yes.
I mean,
Absolutely.
how did you get into the where you're posting these videos on social
Yeah.
media? You have what, almost a half a million followers now on
On
Instagram.
Instagram,
Did
yes.
did you set out saying this social media is my platform and I want to be an influencer, or is this just sort of happenstance, that a
Yeah.
natural way that this has all evolved? And why do you think that is?
Yeah, so it's really interesting. The start to the social media side was actually when I got into the special education world. So I do special education math, and I teach kids who are in the gen ed class almost all day, right? And so I'm either teaching alongside a gen ed teacher in a gen ed classroom for math, and there's students who have IEPs for some kind of disability, but they can hang at grade level as long as they have that extra support. And then I also teach what we call a resource class, which is still, it's grade level, but it's just less of the standards. And so we take a little bit more time to get them there. So these are kids that are very capable of achieving what they should be achieving at their grade level, but they just need some really intentionally designed instruction to be able to do it, right? And when I got into that world, I realized that there are no resources that are designed for middle schoolers who are like close to getting it, but not quite there or have some kind of learning disability. And so in my mind, I was like, shoot, well, I can design some stuff. And so I started designing some curriculum specifically to be used for special education students in middle school who are learning math. And I was like, well, if I'm going to finish this one day, it's still not done, it'll get there someday, then I need to have a platform that I can be able to sell it on. So that was kind of the original intent. I was like, I'll post some funny things, some relatable things. I'll talk about special education, and maybe I'll have like a little following that once I have these resources, I can kind of start to get them out there. And as I began making videos, I realized, okay, it seems like people are connecting with me, especially on the humorous end, but also on the meaningful end. And so I just began to be a little bit more intentional about, okay, let's create some content that could be valuable and helpful and useful. But the thing that really kind of launched it and took it off was back in November, I decided to start using my voice a little bit more, not just like the voiceovers with the relatable text on the screen, but I was like, I'm going to start talking more. I'm going to see if people connect with me and want to listen to me and my thoughts and that kind of thing. And I decided to take a week. I took a week and I was out at lunch duty and I started writing down every single slang word or trending word that I heard middle schoolers using, like while they're out at lunch/recess. And then I just made a video just listing the words. Like I didn't define them. I didn't talk about them. It was just a minute long video of listing just 24 slang words that I had heard in a week at a middle school in a small town in Arizona. And it blew up. That was my first, like, I had some videos that had gone like a little bit viral, like a million views here and there. But this one, like on Instagram, I think it hit like 10 or 11 million. And then on TikTok, it hit like almost 8 million views. And that is what kind of put me out in front of people to be able to kind of become the guy that talks about the words that kids are using and defines them. And that was the big thing I realized is everybody was commenting like, I've heard this word, but I don't know what it means. And I'm like, oh my gosh, well, I do. So let's talk about it. And from there, it has even in the like funny skits that I do with middle school boys or whatever, I try and loop in as much of the like trending words and phrases as possible because that's the thing that people are really like intrigued by, I think, and connect with. So
Oh my gosh,
yeah,
totally.
that's kind of how it started as one thing, and then I kind of pivoted because I was like, okay, people are connecting, let's go with it. And I love the direction that it's gone. It's super awesome.
They're so fun to watch, and I feel like I'm sitting at my kitchen table listening to my 16-year-old and 12-year-old talk often. Just curious what the student reactions have been to their viral teacher just walking the halls, you
It's
know?
it's pretty funny. So I live in a pretty small town, and so I've known a lot of these kids actually for years. Going back to what you were saying about calling a teacher by their last name, my first couple years, it was like there's like 100 kids that were a part of my youth group that called me Philip, and then now I'm their teacher, and they have to transition to Mr. Lindsay. It was a hard transition. Anyway, so small town. The beginning, it was like, oh my gosh, Mr. Lindsay, that's so cringy. Like, why are you doing these? Why are
Which
you
we'll
doing
define
these
in just
videos?
a minute. Yeah.
And the thing I would tell them, and I was like, every single time, I was like, well, they're not for you. You know, they're not really designed for you to find like entertaining. But as I have gone on and the following has grown, it's become more like, oh, hey, Mr. Lindsay. Like, it's like, ah, yeah, you thought I was cringy, didn't you? and, And now here I am. And one of the recent things was I got verified on TikTok. So I got my blue check mark or whatever.
Wow.
And it's a big deal,
Oh,
apparently.
yes.
And so the kid's like, when did you get verified on TikTok? So it's fun. It's really good. The number one thing that I hear though, probably is my mom won't stop showing me your videos. And you need to stop defining these because I got in trouble for saying one of the words. So
Oh,
yeah, it's funny. We have it's a good relationship, but
yeah.
sometimes they're like, Mr. Lindsay, you gotta stop, man. I gotta be able to use my words. But
Well, I get that at home from my 12-year-old in particular when I
uh-huh.
say some of these words that I've like picked up probably from your videos. And he's like, "Oh, stop, please stop," because everything is embarrassing right now.
Oh yeah.
So I want to play for any of our listeners who maybe haven't heard your videos. I'm going to play the videos because you get the feeling of it without seeing the video too. But just to give an idea, which I don't know how you spewed all this out, but love it. So let me just get this going. Okay. And this is called Getting Ready for That First Day Back to School with Gen Z and Gen Alpha.
What's up, chat? I know the weather's giving summer and the UV's 10, but the school year is here, I fear, so let's lock in. Let's talk about a few things to make sure that you get a W in the chat and avoid being on the top of my ops list this year. First, be real in class. No, be so for real. Using your phone in class, it's giving pick me. So let's just do everybody a favor and yeet that thing into your backpack when you walk into the classroom. Next, be Sigma and have your Chromebook charged. But if for some reason your Chromebook decides to unalive itself, don't walk in here all delulu like you don't know what's going on. Just low-key ask your Pookie for a charger and let's move on with it, no cap. Couple of quick ones. Rizzing up your crush when you should be working. Skibidi Ohio Rizz. Come into class prepared. Major aura points. If the math ain't mathin', don't be skibidi, don't be shook. Just come talk to me and we'll figure it out. Lastly, I know I'm millennial coded. I'm ancient to you. I was born in the 1900s and the things that I had to do in school would send you into a coma. All facts, no printer. But for the love of God, no trolling me about my hairline. Major L. On God, this school year is going to be bussin'. Let's eat it up and leave no crumbs. Slay.
I love that video. I'm not sure which part I like the best, but the millennial coded,
Mhm.
fantastic. Now imagine this. I'm Gen X coded, so
There you
like
go.
ancient history. But let's unpack some of these words that you're using.
Yeah.
I'm going to start with this one because I thought this would have died a very quick death, but I still
Yeah.
hear it around my house. Is skibidi.
Skibidi.
What? Why are we still saying skibidi, and what the heck does it mean?
Yeah, so Skibidi has an interesting history. There's a lot of, as the kids would say, there's a lot of lore surrounding the history and the story of Skibidi. Now, it goes all the way back to 2021, 2022, where there was this trend that was going viral. There was this song that was said like skibbity bop 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 yes yes, right? There was this viral sound that was being used. And the videos were like one of them was this bigger guy who was like bouncing his belly to the music while eating food. And this guy went super viral to this sound. Okay? And so that sound then gets used in a YouTube series called Skibidi Toilet, which is
I've heard the
complete.
skibidi toilet put together, and
Yeah,
I was like, "What?" All right.
it's weird. It's like this brain rot. Like the toilet people and the camera people are like fighting each other. It's weird. It's kind of creepy, honestly. It's this song becomes kind of the theme song of it. They speed it up a little bit. It's like skibbity bop 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 yes yes, and then just like that's the theme song to this YouTube series that blows up and goes like mega viral on YouTube, right? And so then this word and skibbity toilet kind of gets thrown out into a TikTok world. Okay. And people start taking the word skibbity and skibbity toilet and mixing them into these like funny, like brain rot Gen Alpha songs. And so one of the ones that really launched skibbity out there was a song, it was a sound on TikTok. It said, sticking out my giat for the Rizzler, you're so skibidi, you're so phantom tax. And then it goes on with even more these words. That's where skibidi as its own starts to kind of take on this life. And it's kind of it started as like it's like a nonsense word is how it started. It was like kids were just saying skibidi or skibidi toilet as like a filler word, almost like anytime they would stop, be like skibidi toilet, skibidi, or like just don't know what to say, skibidi. It was this weird nonsense type word. And then it has over the last year and a half or so started to actually gain some real meaning, which is why I think it's stuck around. It's still kind of debatable. I think the majority of kids would say that to be skibidi is to be bad. They associate it with skibidi toilet. And so if something's skibidi, it's bad, or even like it's just not good, right? It's cringy, it's not good. So if you have skibidi Ohio Rizz, that means your Rizz is bad.
Got it. That makes sense because the way I have heard my middle schooler use it is kind of with that. Now this all is coming together.
Mhm.
But where does Ohio fit into this?
So Ohio has its own history, right?
Okay.
So have you ever heard of the Florida man?
As in, like, the generic use of, like, somebody's
Yes.
doing something crazy
Something
or
crazy,
right,
something
yes,
weird. It's like
Florida
the
man.
Florida
Yep,
man.
yep.
So like you're familiar with that. And the reason that came to be is because crazy things seem to happen in Florida, right? Like off the wall, crazy things seem to happen in
Can
Florida.
confirm, I used to live there, yes.
Exactly. Ohio has garnered the same reputation as Florida at this point. And so Ohio has had these crazy like news stories that like come out and they get spread, and then there's all these memes about like what's happening in Ohio, and so it's a meme based word. And so Ohio has all these crazy things, and then there was a bunch of memes, and then people started saying things like, "Oh, that only happens in Ohio," or "Only in Ohio," or "That's so Ohio." And so now Ohio, as a state, has been associated with something bad or weird or off the wall. And so to say something's Ohio is to say that it's bad or off the wall or kind of crazy or kind of weird. Okay. And so
That's wild.
it's wild. And it's
Okay,
all memes, right? And that's
okay.
how it happens, whether it's a meme video or like a meme image, these things they get put out to TikTok. And then as people engage with them and comment on them, the meaning kind of like it gets formed as it's being used. It's not like somebody put out an Ohio meme and was like, "This is going to be a really trending like slang word." It's just as people engage with it and kids engage with it, it kind of like develops its meaning. So like
Yeah,
skibidi started as it's
like,
wild.
you just never know, right?
You
Like,
don't, you
there's
don't.
almost it feels like no rhyme or reason, and it feels
Yes,
like right now the slang words seem to be particularly, like, outlandish.
yes,
One that I hear around my house is "What the Sigma?"
yes.
Like, anytime, like, something goes a little off, "What the Sigma?"
The
What
sigma,
what
yeah.
what does that
Do they throw the
mean?
in front of it? Do they say what the
Yeah,
sigma?
well,
Yeah,
every now and again, not every time,
you get the
but I know the what the sigma. Like
Uh-huh.
what
Okay.
is sigma? I don't know.
So
Please
here's
help.
here's the weird thing. Sigma and the way that they use sigma is so different than what the sigma, right? And you would
Okay.
think that
So
they're
like
even
something is sigma, like,
yes,
oh, your sigma is different than what the sigma? Because that's the
exactly.
tone it is. It's the what the
Yeah,
sigma? Yeah, okay.
yes.
All right,
And
so help
so
us out.
sigma, it comes from kind of I'm not keen on the culture that it comes from. It comes from this culture that like they use these words to like rank different kinds of males, and it has a lot to do with like looks and like that kind of thing. So not a great origin story. The way that the kids have kind of adopted it, used it, and changed it though is sigma is related to alpha, and alpha means that you're the best, right?
Alpha,
Sigma
like an alpha male, sure.
Yes,
Okay.
exactly, right? So alpha means that you're the best. Sigma also means that you're the best, but you're like chiller about it. You're
You're not like
humbler.
in your face about like
Exactly,
you've got
because you
some
don't
low
have
key Rizz about it.
low
Per-
key Rizz. Yes,
Rizz. Oh, okay.
absolutely. Right. And
Thank
so it's
you.
like, yeah, it is. And so that's the way that they use it. So if they call you Sigma, it's a good thing, right? If they say like, oh, that's so Sigma, or this is Sigma, or they just in response to something good happening say Sigma, right? So that's how they use that one. Now, what the Sigma is kind of like just a placeholder. Like it would be like saying what the heck or
I see.
what in the world or what just happened. It's like moments of surprise. Like I wasn't expecting that. What the sigma? That's why they say it in that tone. But that came from a meme. Again, like there was a so there's all these they deem them brain rot words, right? And so it's like sigma is a brain rot word, and Ohio, skibidi, sig, all those things, right? And there was somebody who did this like voiceover to how people do those voiceovers? They watch somebody like making food or something like that, and they just voice over their
Yeah,
commentary.
of course.
So
Sure.
there was somebody who was voicing over their commentary to this person making like an ice cream cone. And it got to this point where they added something to the ice cream cone that was kind of like weird or off the wall. And the person doing the voiceover just goes, what the sigma, right? And then somebody takes that video and redoes the voiceover, but instead of just a person watching the video, they have Squidward and SpongeBob watching the video and using their voices. And then when it gets to that point, Squidward goes, what the sigma? And then SpongeBob goes, what the sigma? And they kind of go back and forth. That goes viral, and that section of it becomes a meme. And so now it's used as like, what's going on? What the heck? Like, what the sigma or what the sigma?
Yeah.
So there you go.
Okay.
That's how it works.
It goes back to again, you just never know what is going to
Mhm.
get picked up. And this maybe there's a little caveat to what we're discussing too. We're not saying you should necessarily go home and use these words
Yes.
because that would be super uncool, but I don't think cool is like a thing. But
Not
we can
sigma, that's
then
for sure.
translate what our kids are telling us. There was
Yes.
another thing you've used this word a couple of times or phrase, brain rot.
Yes.
It's not like your brain really rotting. Is it
Yes.
just something like I've picked up hearing it around my house, it just means something like stupid or low
Yes. And so
intelligence or like what is it
yes.
what is the brain rot?
Yes. I think that there is this I think that with the way that TikTok works, if you get sucked into like if you watch the what the sigma memes, you're gonna have all of these slang related videos coming across your profile, right? And it to the point where it rots your brain. All I see is alpha, sigma, full boxed from Fortnite, all these memes that just like saturate the TikTok feeds of somebody who kind of gets sucked into that part of the algorithm. And then there's some like, oh, I don't use that word. That's brain rot. That's uncool. When they still do use the word. So it's like they're kind of trying to like defend themselves, like, oh yeah, it's just brain rot. I'm just brain
Right.
rotting out right now. Like I don't really talk like that. And so it's kind of like an embarrassment type of thing. But yeah, they categorize all of that like meme language as like brain rot
Brain
because you kind
rot.
of get sucked into this hole of like you're in the skibidi Ohio Rizzler grimace shake mogging hole. Like you're just so deep in it that it's rotting your brain.
Okay, couple things. Mogging, I've heard that. But then
Yes.
and maybe this is out, but this mewing thing,
Yes.
what the heck was that? Where they
Okay.
like kind of do something with your jaw? Is
Yes.
that still a
So
thing?
it's still a thing.
Okay.
And it is closely connected with mogging. Okay.
Okay.
And so mogging is like proving that it's showing that you're better than someone. Like, oh, I just mocked them. Like if you're on the sports field and like there was so IMG Academy and Canyon Day, I think that those were the two, not Canyon Day, something, two football teams, national football, high school teams. They just played and IMG was supposed to just crush them. And the other team came back and won. And there's this video going viral of one of the kids on the winning teams, like, we mogged them, we mogged them, we mogged them. Like, we showed that we were better than them. And so that's kind of how it's used. Sometimes, or a lot of times, in like physical appearance kind of thing. And so that's why it's closely connected with mewing. Okay. So mewing is this, it's been around for a long time. It's this exercise that's supposed to get rid of like your double chin, right? And it has to do with, I can't do it right. Like, you're supposed to like stick the tongue to your roof of your mouth and then like swallow, and it like tightens up your jaw, right?
But
Which
why
I don't know
would
how to
middle
do
schoolers and high schoolers need to get rid of a double
it.
chin?
They don't
How
need
about
to.
the 40-somethings?
Exactly.
Show me
Right?
how to
So
do this.
they don't need to, and I don't think they're actually doing it because of that. Because the turn that it took in the trending aspect of it was, oh, when I'm mewing, I can't talk, right? And so it became this like little thing where, and some people think it's super disrespectful, and I understand that and I get that.
Okay.
I try to like bring some of that stuff in the classroom and throw it back at them instead of letting it become this like super disrespectful thing. But anyway, it's, since you can't talk, it's like one of those things where it's like, if somebody's as they say, yapping a little bit too much, you can hit them with the mew, which means you do this, right? And it's like, you're telling them, basically you're telling them like, work on your jawline and stop yapping, right? And, and then the flip side of that is, if I were to ask somebody a question that they don't want to answer, they would basically be like, I can't talk right now, I'm mewing, right? And so that
Oh
was
my
like the
gosh.
trending aspect of it. And then that motion has just, I mean, they're obsessed with it.
This is
They
so
do something,
enlightening.
oh my gosh, they do something cool and you're just like, oh, nice. And they're just like it's just like, and that's like more the mogging side of it. It's wild. It's wild. But
Oh my gosh. I mean, I
fun.
have like pages of words I've heard around. We mentioned Rizz, that's been around for a long
Oh yeah.
time.
And it's
You know
staying
what?
strong.
It stays strong. Fire, same thing. Still hear
Yeah.
that all the time. Like
Which is
that's been
weird, because I used fire. So I graduated high school in 2012. I used fire in high school, and then
really
it turned to lit. Everything was lit.
lit.
That was like when I was in college and on, like, people used lit, right? And now fire's kind of bad. And I was like, oh, I know what fire means. I use that.
You know, it's funny. Just a side note. So my youngest, who just turned 6, he said, "Well, if it's really good, is it then lava?" Like, so it was like, so we're trying to
I
get
would,
that to
I
catch
would
on.
love if that one went. That would be
Well,
so fun.
yeah. So now around
That's
the
so
house,
lava.
if it's even better than fire, we call it, oh, that's lava. Yeah.
That's awesome.
What are some of the other key ones that, oh, you know what? I wanted to, before you get into what you're really hearing right now, what about
Yeah.
gyat?
Yeah. Yeah.
Gyat? Gyat? Am I
Yeah.
saying that correctly?
Yeah. I mean,
Okay.
some people say gyat, some people say
Gyat.
gyat. Like,
Okay.
and then really, if you want to do it the right way, you have to like, I'm not even gonna I'm not gonna do it, but you have to like yell it like, gyat. Like, and so
Yeah.
okay, that one. Here's what it means. It means a big butt. Okay. If you have a gyat, you have a big butt. Now, here's where it came from though. When you see a big butt, traditionally, some people, not myself, when you see a big butt, you might exclaim, "God dang," right? And
Okay. Okay.
that gets shortened to "gyat dang," and from there, you just have the "gyat" side of things. Now, it's an expression, right? You see it, you go "gyat" or whatever. It turned into very much like a noun. Like, instead of like, oh, I say this when I see a big butt, it turned into like just the kids using it, whatever. A gyat is a big butt. Like, they're one and the same. The funny thing about that one was, at the very beginning of this was beginning of last school year, and that one's still around. It's still used. At the beginning of last school year, they were trying to hide what the meaning of it was, and so they had different acronyms for the GYAT to kind of convince you, like, oh no, it's nothing bad. It just means get your act together, right? And so they were saying, oh no, it just means get your act together. I'm just telling them to get their act together. Um, and then when I caught on that they were lying was when they were like, oh no, it actually means go you athletic teens. And I was like,
That
that
no.
is so,
Good try.
yeah,
No
that's
way.
so bad that I know that you're lying now. And so I started doing some digging. But it was funny. We had at the beginning of last school year, we do these social contracts where it's like in the classroom we're going to act like this towards each other between students and teachers. And there was a couple of classrooms that had GIAT on their social contract because the teacher thought it meant get your act together. Like, oh yeah, that's a good thing to put on our social contract. And so kids were like
Oops.
freaking out. They were like, oh my gosh, we got it on the social contract. And that's when I was like, something's going on here. I got to figure out what's going on with this. And that's what kind of started my investigation into figuring out what that one is. But yeah, so that's what it means. It means big butt.
Okay, well, that's good to know. What are some of the other, that we haven't hit on? I feel like we're hitting on some of the key ones
Yeah.
this year, but what are a couple of the others that you're starting to really hear around, or you're still really hearing
Yes.
around the classroom?
Yeah, the big ones that are still, and we've hit on these ones, but the ones that are still going strong are what the Sigma and Sigma. Those two are still going very, very strong. Rizz is still very. I feel like Rizz is going to be around
And
forever
that's
now.
great.
It's
I love
yeah, I
that word. Like,
I
it's
like it too.
fun. Yeah.
Yes, I think it's fun. There's so many different like ways to play with it and have fun with it. Like all the different names, like the Risley Bear and Wizard of Oz. Like you can just like there's so many things you can do with that. So those are two of them. The other ones, this one's a little bit more subtle. Is Be So For Real. Okay, they really like that one, which just
Well,
means
for
like
real has been around, but
yes,
how does this differentiate from that?
it just takes it up a level, I guess you could say.
Okay.
It's like,
So
oh, for real.
emphasizing it.
Yes, it's like be so for real. Like stop messing around, stop playing around. Like tell me the truth. Be so for real right now. You're messing with me, right? That's how they would use that. But the big two ones now, this one kind of started at the end of last school year, trended over the summer, and it's coming back very, very strong. Is aura points or aura?
Okay.
Okay. So aura, like the word aura, it has to do with like your essence, right? Like who you are, the energy you give off, like that kind of thing. Now, aura, they've kind of taken that word and done a little bit of adjusting to it, not much, which is kind of nice. It's pretty easy to understand. But how much aura you have is how cool you are or how not cool you are. And there are aura points that you either gain aura in certain situations or lose aura in certain situations. So I have kids on the daily, they'll get they'll raise their hand and they'll get a question right. And they'll be like, yes, did I get some aura? And I was like, yeah, like
Major
max
aura
aura,
points.
right? Infinite aura, major aura points, right? And then you have things like somebody's walking down the hallway and their backpack's unzipped. I did it the other day. And somebody yells, negative aura. And I'm just like,
Okay.
what? They're like, your backpack's unzipped. And so it's just like it's these silly little things that either like gain you points or lose you points. And I really like this one because you can play it up in the classroom so easily. As it's just like, we have this like you can check them like if they're not doing what there's like, hey, kind of check yourself moment. It's like, hey, negative aura, bro. Like, and then you move on and they're just like, oh. And it's just because it's their word, it means a little bit more to them than like, hey, check yourself, right? And so it's pretty fun. It's pretty cool.
Yeah, and it goes back to meeting them where they are, like speaking their
Yes,
language
yes,
that, they
yes,
hear it maybe in a little bit different way. So,
yes,
maybe
absolutely,
when they don't unload the dishwasher, like, hey, negative aura
absolutely.
points, bro.
Negative aura, man. And you could even I've had these thoughts where I'm just like, oh man, I could really play it up and like give them a base level of aura points in my classroom.
I love
And
that.
there's certain things that you lose or gain aura points with, and at the end of the quarter, it's like if you have this many aura points, you get a bag of Takis or whatever. Like there's a lot of different ways that you can kind of use some of these words that because like aura, if you use aura for whatever reason, they don't find it as cringy as if you use something like Rizz. And I
Oh.
think it's because it's, I don't
Uh-huh.
know exactly why, but like if I say something about aura, they're like begging me to engage in the aura conversation. They would rather me not say anything about their Rizz, right? So I don't know what the difference is there, but it's kind of cool. So you can kind of use that one to your
I
advantage.
kind
But
of see it translating to home as like, is that allowance tied to all your aura points? Like,
yeah, man.
vacuuming made your aura points. Put away
Yes,
your laundry,
yes,
got some aura points.
absolutely, absolutely. I love it.
Yeah, one thing too, and boy, I mean, we could go on and on. Mid, I hear mid a lot, just
Yes,
like kind of like
yes.
medium, like kind of average, right?
Yeah, it's in the middle.
Yeah,
It's not it's not the
you're kind of
best,
being
it's not
mid,
the
or
worst.
that's mid. It's not
Yep,
great.
yep.
It's not fire or whatever.
Yes,
Um,
exactly.
One video in particular, though, I do want to just pay attention to, because I think it's important for us as parents to know too. You talk about it with being a special education teacher. There's a word that
Yes,
kids use that I just think it's important for parents to know. Like, if we hear it, it would be a good
yes,
opportunity to shut it down. So, can you talk a little bit
yes.
about that?
Are you referring
SPED?
to
Is it
the Yes,
SPED?
yes,
Yes.
yes. Yep, and so SPED is an acronym, right? It's a not an acronym. It's a abbreviation. There we go. That's the word I'm looking for special education, right? And so, whereas back in my day, people would use the R word to be insulting towards people who were in special education, kids now use SPED as kind of an insult, right? And so, calling somebody SPED in like a middle school or high school context would mean, oh, I think you're dumb. I think you're stupid. I think you're, whatever. And what I don't think a lot of kids realize is what I think they know. I don't think they're just like using it without knowing anything about the word. But I think that there's a deeper conversation to be had with kids when that word comes up than just saying like, "Oh, don't use that word. That's offensive." Because we can say that all day, and then behind our backs, they're still going to use it. I have heard that word used quite a bit. I'm in classes that have a mix of gen ed kids and kids who are in special education. The biggest thing I try and help kids and parents realize is that special education is a much broader category than I think a lot of people understand. I think when people picture special education, the only thing they picture is like a self-contained room, like a special education room where kids are like they have a disability that affects them severely enough that they can't be like out in the gen ed population a lot. And so they spend most of their time in like the special education room. That makes up a percentage of students who have IEPs or have disabilities, but the number is only about 10%. Only about 10% of kids with an IEP, it might be closer to 20 actually, spend a majority of their time in the special education room throughout the day. 80% of kids with an IEP are like, they're just out and about and they're in gen ed classes. And by any like, you would not be able to look at them or even talk to them and understand that they have some kind of disability that makes learning difficult for them. And so I think that I think that's one of the biggest conversations that needs to be had between parents and kids and teachers and students and on a like school wide front is understanding what special education actually is, that it is simply helping students who learn differently actually learn. And that just means designing instruction differently or specially for them. And I think the problem is, sorry, I'm going a little bit,
No, it's
my
okay.
brain's
Yeah.
going like this, but I think the problem with it is for a long time, we just don't talk. We just haven't talked about it. We just don't talk about, we don't educate students on what something like that could actually do to a person or cause a person to feel. And I have found that every single time I have opened up that conversation, when a student says, hey, "You're so sped" or "That's so sped," and I kind of lead them in this conversation of understanding what special education is and what that could communicate to somebody, I have not had a single student come back with like, they have never responded to me in a way that's like, "Oh, that's stupid. I don't really care." Like every single time we go down that road and we have that conversation, it's met with empathy and understanding and a little bit of remorse and like, holy moly, I didn't really understand it that way. And so I think that just goes to show like some of these things we need to just talk about more and actually give these kids the benefit of the doubt that they are thinking and they are thinkers. And when you have these meaningful conversations with them, they can grasp like just these basic human things of like empathy, right? And they can go, oh, yeah, I see how that could be super hurtful to somebody that I know and love and interact with on a daily basis. And then the cool thing is, too, you have kids in that class. Like I've had conversations in a co-taught class with a gen ed kid. And then after the conversation's done, you have a kid go, yeah, you know what? I actually have an IEP. I'm in special education because I have dyslexia. And then they just own it and they talk about it. And there's just like that even more human connection that leads to even more love, if you will, that keeps, kind of drives out that negative thing. And so I think it's just a really cool conversation to have and be aware of with your kids. And I have a video that kind of models that conversation. That's the one that you're referencing. If so, as a parent, if you're like, man, but I don't really know how to explain that, like I kind of do a skit and model what that conversation would look like with a student. And obviously, it's not going to look exactly like that. Kids are all different, but yeah, I think it's a really important conversation to be having. I appreciate you asking about that. Yeah.
Well, there are learning opportunities in these
Yes.
words. And, as parents, we always have to try and find those learning opportunities. This is potentially a good
Yes.
way to reach them. And I think it just goes back to that idea of empathy and perspective taking. Kids aren't,
Yes.
naturally trying to usually in most cases, they're not trying to
Mhm.
be disrespectful and using these words.
Yes.
They need that perspective. They need that
They do.
education. And that is our job as teachers and as parents. So I'm so grateful that you were able to come on. I know it's super early where you are because we got Arizona, we've got Maine here, but what a
Awesome.
great conversation. And, we ask this of every guest, but if there was one takeaway for us parents when it comes to what we talked about today, what would that be from
Yeah.
your perspective?
Yeah. I think that your takeaway as a parent would be, and this is especially for middle school boys, but I think it applies to middle school girls, is your kids, especially once they hit the teenage years, are craving connection with you. Um, they they may not express it in the best way. They may not ever admit that. But they are craving connection with you and they desire for you to know who they are and what they're interested in and do your best as a parent to support them in those things. And so these words, what I've found, knowing these words, understanding these words, even using these words on occasion in a slightly cringy way, I've heard countless stories from parents who have DM'd me or messaged me or whatever, just saying it opened up just a different avenue in our relationship and our ability to be able to connect and then have more meaningful conversations about what's going on at school and how making friends is going and how sports might be going or extracurriculars might be going. And so just trust and know that your kids, they want to connect with you. It may be uncomfortable because teenagers are awkward and honestly adults are kind of awkward too. and but don't let that keep you from kind of putting yourself out there and connecting with your student and getting to know who they are because that'll be really important for them later in life as an adult.
And sometimes it takes multiple times to try.
Yes.
And that's
Yep. And
okay
sometimes you'll
too.
hear I don't know a million times.
Right.
And you'll push past the I don't knows and then you'll break into something really meaningful.
I love it. Mr. Lindsay, thank you so much. This is so fun. I want
Thank
to,
you.
I'll let our listeners know too. We'll put links to your pages on our show notes and
Awesome.
then on our website, which is wgme.com/raising me. Have a great school day today.
Thank you.
Hope you get lots of Rizz points,
Aura.
aura points. Okay. Okay. I'm going to go back to the drawing board.
Awesome. Thank you.
Oh my gosh. I had so much fun talking with Mr. Lindsay. What an awesome teacher. And of course, as we talked about, this really is more to help you translate what you're hearing at home rather than you going home and trying to dazzle your kids with your newfound cool or fire lingo. Though I will say, after this conversation, I did take home my new vocabulary and had some really good laughs, some really good eye rolls, too. That's for sure. Thank you so much for listening to Raising Me. I'm Adrienne Stein. This episode is edited by Megan Littlefield and produced with Nate Eldridge. Please follow Raising Me wherever you get your podcasts. And of course, we appreciate a positive rating and review so others can find this message. Wherever you are, I hope you learned something new and get to take a little time for you.